Quadratic equations are all around us. In nature, they describe the motion of basketballs, rocket ships, and even ballet dancers. In this video, we're going to review the 3 common types of quadratic equations and learn how to solve them quickly and easily using a graphing calculator. Are you ready? Let's get started. Many quadratic equations have 2 solutions. These can be factored or solved using the quadratic formula. An example is x squared plus 7x plus 6 equals 0, which can be factored into x plus 6 times x plus 1 equals 0, which when solved gives x equals negative 6 or x equals negative 1. Another example is 2x squared minus 5x minus 3 equals 0, which factors into 2x plus 1 times x minus 3 equals 0, and solves for x equals negative 1/2 or x equals 3. If we graph a quadratic equation, the solutions are represented by the points where the graph crosses the x-axis. So a graph of x squared plus 7x plus 6 will cross the x-axis here at x equals negative 6 and here at x equals negative 1. Likewise, a graph of 2x squared minus 5x minus 3 will cross the x-axis at x equals negative 1/2 and at x equals 3. Unlike the last 2 examples, some quadratic equations only have one solution. These can be factored into 2 identical terms. For example, x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 0 factors into x plus 3 times x plus 3 equals 0 and gives the single solution x equals negative 3. The graph of a quadratic equation with just one solution crosses the x-axis at a single point. In this example, the graph of x squared plus 6x plus 9 barely intersects the x-axis here at x equals negative 3. The last kind of quadratic equation has no solution at all. These can't be factored and have a negative discriminant. That's the part under the square root in the quadratic formula. For example, look at 3x squared minus x plus 2 equals 0. This quadratic equation can't be factored, and the discriminant comes to negative 73, indicating that this equation has no solution. On a graph, quadratic equations that don't have a solution never intersect the x-axis, as you can see in this example graph of 3x squared minus x plus 2. Now that we've reviewed the 3 basic types of quadratic equations and some of their algebraic properties, we're going to look at how to solve quadratic equations using a TI graphing calculator. This can be particularly useful for equations with non-integer constants.
Our first example is x squared plus x plus 4 equals 0. To solve this one using the graphing calculator, we're going to turn it on and press y equals, then enter our equation, x squared plus x plus 4, and hit graph. This one is easy. We see that the graph of the quadratic equation never intersects the x-axis. Therefore, this quadratic equation has no solution. Another equation that we can solve with the graphing calculator is x squared plus 1.5x plus 0.5625 equals 0. This one is nice to solve graphically because it's harder to factor the non-integer coefficients. Our first step is again to press y equals and then enter our equation, x squared plus 1.5x plus 0.5625, and then graph it. This looks like it might be touching the x-axis, and if it is, we want to use the calculator to tell us where that point is, because that's our solution. To do this, we're going to press second trace to get the calculate menu, and then select option 2 to find the zeros or the solutions of the equation. The calculator needs us to tell it approximately where we think the graph might be crossing the x-axis, so we're going to arrow left until we're somewhere on the left side of the solution, press enter, then arrow right to give it our right boundary, somewhere over here, and press enter again. And then it wants to know a guess, so we arrow down to about here. Press enter one more time. And this time, the calculator gives us a 0, or a solution to our equation, at negative 0.7499997, which rounds to negative 0.75. And if you substitute negative 0.75 back into our original equation, we can see that this is indeed a solution to the given quadratic equation. So far, we've used the graphing calculator to look at quadratic equations that have no solution and that have one solution. But what about a quadratic equation with two solutions? How do you find the solutions for that using the graphing calculator? Like before, our first step is to press y equals and then enter our equation, which in this case is going to be x squared minus 0.75x minus 8.125, and graph it. As we can see, this has two solutions, and we want to know what they are. Like before, we're going to press second trace and find option 2 to find the zeros or the solutions. Let's start by looking at the leftmost solution, which looks like it's between negative 2 and negative 3. So we're going to give it our left boundary somewhere to the left of that point, maybe up here, and hit enter. Then give it to the right boundary somewhere to the right of the point we're talking about, but not so far over that it gets in the way of our other solution. Press enter here, and then give it a guess about there. And it gives us a 0 of x equals negative 2.5, which is one of the solutions to the equation. However, there's also a second solution, a second 0, a second place where the graph crosses the x-axis. To find this one, we're again second trace, option 2 to find the zeros or the solutions. Our left bound is somewhere about here, so that it's far away from the 0 we're not interested in. Press enter, then give it a right bound on the other side of the x-axis up here, and a guess looks like it's about here, and press enter. And this 0, this solution, is at x equals 3.25, which is the second solution to the quadratic equation x squared minus 0.75x minus 8.125 equals 0.
To sum up, a quadratic equation can have 0, 1, or 2 solutions, and its graph can cross the x-axis 0, once, or twice, respectively. On a graphing calculator, you can find the solutions to a quadratic equation, if they exist, by graphing the quadratic equation, then pressing second trace to get the calculate menu, selecting option 2, and then using the right and left arrow keys to find the boundaries and a guess of the solution for your quadratic equation. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.